Okay, this is a response to a recent video by Conference Reports, The Still Hard Problem of Consciousness, which was a response to my video, Consciousness and Quantum Voodoo. First of all, Fred, thanks a lot for responding to my video. I really appreciate your comments. So rather than address all of your points, I want to start with your statement that we seem to have different interpretations of the hard problem. That is, different interpretations of what we think the question or the problem is specifically alluding to. I think there's a number of ways to go about looking at this. For example, we could spend hours debating the nuances of exactly what we believe David Chalmers meant when he coined the term. This would be an interesting academic exercise, but I guess in honesty, I'm more interested in better understanding what your exact interpretation is. So first, I basically agree that my interpretation is very closely aligned to the problem of dualism. And to get us both on the same page, here's a quick copy of the text I used in the previous video that you quoted. Please pause the video if you actually want to read it here. And in your video, this is what I heard you say. The hard problem is not how these physical things can have an ethereal quality. The point is, how can we see and touch and feel these things? That's the hard problem. How is there such a thing as the experience of seeing, touching, and tasting? And then you continue, why do we have these things as qualia? And just for grins, here's what Dave Chalmers has to say in his book, The Conscious Mind. The problem of explaining these phenomenal qualities is just the problem of explaining consciousness. That is the really hard part of the mind-body problem. Why should there be conscious experience at all? It is utterly unexpected. I suspect that our difference of interpretation boils down to the way we interpret the meaning of the words how and why. Let's look at these two questions. If someone asks me, why does that man have a bag over his head, or why does thunder seem to always follow lightning? I can interpret or tailor my answer in one of at least two ways. And to a large degree, it's based on my interpretation or assumption about the mind of the asker, or their real motivation for asking it. That is, I can answer each of them as if, 1. The asker is looking solely for a description of the mechanism or the series of steps involved that produce these phenomena, or I can assume that the asker is really looking for a teleological answer. That is, for the first question, I could either answer, the man has a bag over his head because somebody put the bag over his head, or the man has a bag over his head because he's performing in a skit and he's one of the actors and he doesn't want us to know who he is. So when Mr. Chalmers asks, why should there be conscious experience at all, or you effectively ask, why are there qualia, I can interpret it in one of two ways. Looking for a description of the mechanism, i.e., why or how is it that qualia occur when certain neurons fire in my head, or I can interpret it in the second way, in a way that to me implies some kind of teleology, some kind of purpose. E.g., why would God create us in a way where we have conscious experience? Wouldn't it have been much easier just to have done it mechanically or zombie-like? And if I'm correct, and I could very well not be, it sounds like you're asking it more from a teleological perspective, as in, assuming hypothetically there was a creative force in the universe, why would it be the case, or what would be the reason that there would be qualia, when it seems like it would be much simpler just to do it all mechanically? And maybe the real issue is in the word used by Chalmers when he says it is utterly unexpected. Just as in the case of lightning and thunder, if one didn't understand what a gas was, or the atmosphere, or that lightning heats up the air, you might similarly argue that thunder is unexpected. So it could be that I'm entirely missing something here, and there may be yet a third way to interpret this why question. So before I proceed any further, I'll wait to hear back from you with a hopeful clarification on what you mean when you ask why. So the last thing I want to talk about is electromagnetism and physicality. So you make a statement in your response video to the effect, you don't really escape physicality by citing EM activity just because it's invisible and intangible. EM activity is as physical as everything else. And I think this cuts right to the heart of the problem of dualism and to the problem of epistemology, or better, the way epistemology affects our ability to solve the problem of dualism. The problem, I believe, is with the word physical. Like most words, we use it in different ways at different times. For example, one way we use it is if something is tangible. Can we touch it and see it? Is it res extensa, as Descartes would say? Most people would agree that bowling balls are much more physical than, say, magnetic fields and radio waves. On the other hand, people sometimes use the word physical in terms of the scientific discipline of physics, in which case one might say that magnetic fields and radio waves are physical because they're covered in physics classes, and their behavior can be predicted by Maxwell's equations, etc., and also that they're a natural phenomenon in the universe. And this is why I look at electromagnetic or EM activity as a solution to the question of dualism vis-à-vis Occam's razor. I think it's fair to say that both Descartes and Leibniz viewed brain activity as being necessarily physical, as in the tangible sense. And to be honest, I suspect a lot of people today still view neurological activity in this paradigm, even though Descartes preceded Michael Faraday by about 200 years and Faraday preceded us by almost 200 years. Regardless, if one allows themselves to consider that maybe the basis of qualia is EM, I believe the chasm of dualism then suddenly collapses. And this is because now the neurophysical activity of the brain is much closer in kind to the mental activity, i.e. qualia. Yes, EM activity is physical in the sense it's a natural phenomenon of the universe and that we can describe it mathematically. Note that I didn't say that we actually understand EM activity. We know just enough to be dangerous. EM is physical in that sense, but hardly physical in the tangible sense. And so to the Stuart Hameroffs and Roger Penroses of the world, I say, why bring quantum voodoo into the discussion when, a la Occam's razor, we've completely ignored EM activity? Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching my video. I'm looking forward to your response.